Explore another very big key disruption, AI, where financial services firms have realized significant benefits across areas. And now with also generative AI, the opportunity is far more significant. So to give us the big picture, we have Balaji showing us the path of the future of banking. So Balaji, over to you.
Awesome, Rohan. I think good to learn about data trust, and then we talked about cloud as well as the modernization journey, right? So let me zoom in further. And before I do that, let me take a leaf from one of the recent surveys and highlight two interesting points that I learned, right? So by 2030, the survey says that pretty much virtually all of the banking activities or transactions will be virtual in some form or fashion, right? That's one point. The second is about 2 billion people in the from a planet would be on digital banking, right? Very interesting perspective. So that what that means is the definition of banking itself has been changing quite rapidly. We all can feel it with customers looking at mobile banking, digital banking, all of these conveniences, and so on and so forth, right? So when we look at, and from my experience working with several banks and financial services firms, I see that one of the key requirement is, or need of the hour is also to have agility, right? So agility is a key part because the changes are quite rapid, both at the consumer side as well as the technology side of the house, right? So therefore, we talk about what is called as a platform-centric approach. So how do we deal with agility? Is by helping from a platform-centric approach. And what I mean by that is, on the input, you are able to manage that in terms of, whether it's data systems that you're integrating and so on, bringing it to the platform. But more importantly, you're able to respond to the customer changes or other changes on the front end with a lot of the use cases and so on, right? Let's zoom in further. Let's go to the next slide, please. And you will see that there are two capabilities. There's data, and then there is AI and insights that are coming from the platform that make this duality real, right? So if you look at data, there are quite a number of capabilities, particularly from a banking standpoint. Data management, data governance tends to be very key, but there are building blocks of capability that we have seen. So I have helped a client deliver a bank, one of the leading banks from Europe, a global bank based out of Europe. We helped them with the data as a service on the back of a data platform. And the impact is we got their data life cycle, so to speak, in terms of being able to get the data to the users from 11 weeks almost down to 1 day, right? Pretty powerful in terms of being able to respond and react to the market aspect, right? So that's one part of the interesting element. There are a number of capabilities we have helped banks, and we are looking forward to helping many others, right? Go to the next slide, please. So that's one part of the value on top of cloud. Now, AI obviously has taken the industry by storm, and here I would like to split it into two parts. There is a predictive capability, which is your traditional AIs, which have been there for recent couple of years, and then the generative part. Let me zoom in terms of use cases that banks and financial services can look at, right? So at the front end, if you look at customer engagement and customer interfacing areas, so you will see that there's quite a bit of adoption in terms of agents. Now, these are not agents, virtual agents. We're not talking about the ones which are based off of Q&A or FAQ type of approach. These are intelligent agents which are powered by a lot of AI and data coming in, so that you can improve your customer satisfaction, customer service elements there, right? So Bank of America, Bank of Tokyo, many clients are leveraging that. Second bigger use case is customer engagement, right? Customer intimacy is a big part of banking work, and you will see that quite a bit of cross-sell, upsell, and customer understanding is a key part that's enabled by AI, right? Now let's look at the operational side, or the core of the bank in terms of use cases, right? So two that I would like to draw attention to is, you will see that number of processes are getting automated, and the automation is also, when it's powered by AI, it really amplifies the benefits, right? So be it finance processing, invoice processing, or whatnot on the back of NLP or other capabilities, you can see many number of cases there. But the other interesting case is fraud detection and being able to manage fraud, right? Now, there's a traditionally we have used anomaly detection, which is basically saying, hey, what are the patterns of fraud, and then how can I look at the outliers which are fraud, and so on and so forth. So this is something that banks have leveraged, particularly for credit card transactions or anomalies in terms of your deviation from your normal, and so on and so forth, right? So that's a classic case. Contract management is a big thing. So within banking world, what I have seen is there are a lot of interactions, with several parties, which is basically vendors, payment service providers, or other providers, and so on and so forth. And therefore, contract intelligence is something that there's a good use case where you can see a lot of benefits, right? From a strategic standpoint, if you look at it from a broad-based perspective, if you see, there again, there are two that I would like to call. Risk management is a key part where we know risk is at the heart of managing risk is at the heart of financial services. So therefore, whether it's credit risk or helping your loan servicing or so on, very specific use cases are today powered by AI on the back of good customer data or their history and behavior and all of that part. But even use cases like AML are well powered by data and insights, right? And then so there are multiple number of cases that you can see. Let's zoom in a little bit on the generative side. Next slide, please. Yeah. So these are rich capabilities that we have seen. Now, when it comes to generative capability, so that this is, we saw predictive capability, which is basically your forecasting ability to look at what's going to happen next, right? But generative is taking the capability to much higher level, right? So here, given a set of inputs, I'm able to now get new outputs, right? So that's in simple essence, that's what it means. Therein, the survey again is very optimistic in terms of the kind of impact we see both globally across industry and so on. But let's look at the banking use cases because that's of primary interest for us, right? So again, when we look at customer service, you will see that quite a number of agents, like I said, they're all powered on the back of generative capability. But this time we are seeing use cases which are even more functional in nature. What I mean by that is, let's say, a wealth advisory type of a capability is also being looked at. So it's not replacing a traditional wealth management expert, but it's supplementing a wealth management SME so that he can do a lot more on the back of this, right? Productivity and so on and so forth. So that is one side of the use case, right? Then let's talk about fraud. So we just now talked about in the traditional model, a lot of patterns are being used from a fraud standpoint. With generative capability, one of the things that we see is ability to generate synthetic data, right? So that's a big adoption. And one of the primary use case we see is fraud, right? So what I mean by synthetic data is in fraud, one of the key things is how do we know various patterns, right? So each new scenario is a problem child, and we don't have enough data to be able to go after them, right? So synthetic data allows us to say, hey, give me data set which model a certain behavior which the fraudsters are expected to adopt, or they have already done that, right? And this pattern allows me to literally generate new data sets. So therefore, I can go and build models and put them as part of my fraud detection pipeline and process, right? So that's a case. And again, customer engagement and so on. So number of cases are emerging on the back of generative, huge impact, and literally very well helps with the theme that we are going after today, which is amplifying the full capability from a financial services standpoint. Hopefully you got a good view of some of the use cases.